The world does not turn against you by accident. It turns when you begin to rise. The hostility you feel is not random. It is not misunderstanding. It is not bad luck. It is the natural response of insecure minds to emerging power. The moment you refuse to remain predictable, agreeable, and controllable, resistance appears. Most people interpret that resistance as rejection. The few who understand recognize it as confirmation. Human nature is not built to celebrate individual ascent. It is built to protect hierarchy. Stability comforts the ordinary. Your evolution threatens that comfort. When you become more disciplined, more self-contained, more capable, you expose the stagnation of others. And exposure breeds resentment. This is the truth most cannot endure. People do not attack weakness. They attack potential. When you feel the room grow colder, when conversations change tone, when support becomes silence, you are witnessing the oldest pattern in social psychology. Groups defend themselves against disruption. They label strength as arrogance. They call ambition selfishness. They disguise fear as moral judgment. If you respond emotionally, you lose. Emotional reaction confirms their narrative. Anger makes you appear unstable. Defensiveness makes you appear guilty. Pleading makes you appear dependent. The world is watching not for your pain, but for your composure. This is where most collapse. They seek reassurance. They attempt explanation. They try to win approval back. They negotiate with critics. They explain their intentions. They defend their character. They waste energy attempting to correct perception. But perception is not corrected through explanation. It is corrected through positioning. Niccolò Machiavelli, the cold observer of power, understood this without illusion. In The Prince, he wrote not for the innocent, but for those willing to see human nature without decoration. He understood that love is unstable, approval is conditional, loyalty is temporary, but respect, especially fear-infused respect, endures. When the world turns against you, you are not facing a moral crisis. You are facing a power test. And power is never emotional. It is strategic. The first shift must occur internally. You must stop interpreting opposition as injustice and begin interpreting it as information. Who resists you? Why now? What do they fear losing? What do they sense in you that threatens them? And those who see clearly do not ask, why don't they support me? They ask, what does my growth expose in them? The answer is almost always insecurity, dependency, or loss of control. When you understand this, the chaos around you becomes structured. Hostility is no longer personal. It becomes predictable, and what is predictable can be navigated. This is the beginning of silent dominance. You do not retaliate. You do not retreat. You observe. Observation is the first weapon of the isolated strategist. When everyone turns, they reveal themselves. They speak more freely. They show alliances. They expose motives. Crisis removes masks. The emotionally reactive seek defense. The disciplined seek data. And data is power. Chapter 2. Detachment as a weapon. When opposition intensifies, that instinct urges you to defend your identity. Resist that instinct. The need to defend is the need to be validated. And validation is dependency in disguise. The moment you require others to confirm your worth, you surrender control of your emotional stability. Machiavelli warned rulers against relying on affection. Affection fluctuates with convenience. Today's ally becomes tomorrow's critic the moment advantage shifts. The world does not operate on loyalty. It operates on interest. Understand this without bitterness. Detachment is not coldness. It is clarity. When the world turns against you, your greatest danger is not external pressure. It is internal instability. Doubt whispers, anger tempts. The desire to prove yourself grows louder. You imagine confrontations. You rehearse arguments. You fantasize about vindication. All this mental noise weakens you. Those who master themselves silence it. You must learn to stand inside rejection without absorbing it. Let them misunderstand. Let them speculate. Let them distort your motives. The urge to correct every false narrative is a trap. The powerful do not chase perception. They shape it indirectly through results. Detachment creates psychological distance. Distance creates perspective. Perspective restores control. When you detach, something shifts. Insults lose their sting. Exclusion loses its intimidation. Isolation loses its threat. You begin to see hostility not as attack, but as a reaction to your refusal to conform, and this realization is stabilizing. Most people collapse under social pressure because their identity is externally constructed. They are who others affirm them to be, or remove affirmation, and they crumble. You must construct identity internally. The few who understand this become unshakable. Not because they are loved, not because they are supported, but because their self-concept is independent of applause. Machiavelli observed that a ruler must learn how not to be good when goodness becomes a liability. This is not permission for cruelty. It is instruction in realism. If kindness invites exploitation, kindness must be measured. If transparency invites sabotage, silence must be chosen. When the world turns against you, emotional generosity becomes a vulnerability. Reserve yourself. Speak less. Reveal less. React less. Silence unsettles opponents. They expect emotional leakage. They anticipate visible frustration. When you deny them that confirmation, they begin to question their influence over you. Control of emotion is control of perception, and perception governs power. Detachment allows you to analyze without panic. Who benefits from your isolation? Who attempts to provoke you? Who remains neutral? Who watches quietly? Every dynamic contains opportunity if you are calm enough to see it. Most fight battles emotionally and lose strategically. You must do the opposite. Remain strategically calm while others become emotionally reckless. When they gossip, you refine your skill. When they criticize, you improve your leverage. When they exclude, you build independence. The storm outside must not become a storm within. This is not suppression. It is discipline. And discipline is the foundation of authority. Chapter 3. Strategic Positioning in Hostile Territory. Once you have detached emotionally, clarity sharpens. Now you must reposition. When the world turns against you, direct confrontation is rarely effective. Open conflict energizes enemies. It validates their narrative of opposition. It invites escalation. Instead, reposition silently. Power does not always advance forward. Sometimes it steps sideways. Machiavelli emphasized adaptability. A rigid ruler collapses under shifting circumstances. A flexible one survives. If your environment becomes hostile, examine the terrain. Where are the incentives? Where are the alliances of convenience? Where is influence truly concentrated? Most people respond to hostility by shrinking. You must respond by expanding intelligently. This does not mean louder presence. It means increased capability. Skill is the most undeniable form of power. While others focus on undermining you socially, deepen your competence privately. Increase your value. Make yourself difficult to replace. When your utility grows, even adversaries must calculate differently. There is a psychological law at work. People tolerate those they need. If they cannot defeat you socially and cannot ignore you functionally, they must negotiate with you strategically. But this leverage is earned, not declared. During isolation, many become desperate for allies. They align with anyone who offers minimal support. This is weakness disguised as strategy. Desperation signals fragility. Choose alliances carefully, if at all. The strongest position is often selective independence. But when you are not visibly dependent on any faction, you become unpredictable, and unpredictability demands caution from others. Be measured. Be patient. Avoid public displays of rivalry. Public conflict forces people to choose sides prematurely. Private calculation creates advantage. Observe who overplays their hand. In hostile environments, insecure opponents expose themselves through exaggeration. They speak too much. They overreach. They attempt humiliation. Let them. Time reveals imbalance. Your task is not immediate victory. Your task is structural advantage. Structural advantage emerges when your discipline outlasts their emotional volatility, when your competence outweighs their narratives, when your silence unsettles their certainty. Machiavelli understood timing. Fortune favors those prepared to act at the decisive moment. Preparation happens in obscurity. Victory becomes visible only at the right opportunity. If you remain stable while others exhaust themselves with hostility, momentum shifts, not loudly, quietly, and quiet shifts are the most irreversible. Chapter 4. Silent Dominance and Inner Ascent. Eventually, something changes. Not in them, in you. The world turning against you becomes less frightening, less personal, less dramatic. You no longer measure yourself by inclusion. You no longer seek comfort in agreement. You recognize resistance as a sign that you have moved beyond ordinary alignment. This is the transformation. The isolated individual who endures without emotional collapse becomes psychologically sovereign. Our sovereignty is not control over others. It is control over self under pressure. Machiavelli's lessons were never about cruelty. They were about awareness. He revealed what most prefer not to see. Human beings are driven by fear, self-interest, and perception. Once you accept this, you stop demanding purity from the world. You operate within reality, not fantasy. When everyone appears against you, you gain a rare advantage. You are forced inward. You confront your insecurities without distraction. You refine your discipline because no one is applauding. You strengthen because weakness would be exposed instantly. Opposition accelerates evolution for those who endure it correctly. The majority avoid such pressure. They seek environments of comfort, but comfort breeds softness. Hostility, navigated wisely, forges precision. Here you become less reactive, more observant, less expressive, more intentional, and people notice. Not because you demand recognition, but because composure under pressure radiates authority. Eventually, some who opposed you will soften. Others will remain distant. A few may attempt reconciliation. Your response must remain measured. Forgive strategically. Trust gradually. Reveal selectively. Power regained recklessly is power lost again. True victory is not applause. It is indifference to hostility. When you can stand alone without shrinking, when you can be misunderstood without self-doubt, when you can be opposed without losing direction, you have already won. The world turning against you was never the threat. Your emotional instability was. Control that, and no external force can destabilize you permanently. Stand firm, speak less, observe more, refine constantly. Let discipline replace desperation. Let silence replace defense. Let competence replace complaint. In the end, the one who remains composed while others unravel becomes untouchable. This is not dominance through force. It is dominance through self-mastery, and self-mastery is the final law. Walk forward without needing permission. The world may turn. You do not. They want you to react, not because your reaction will defeat them, but because your reaction will reveal you. When the world turns against you, the first battle is invisible. It unfolds inside your chest, behind your eyes, beneath your silence. Anger rises like heat. Confusion tightens your breath. Yet the need to explain yourself presses against your pride. This is the moment where most lose. They mistake emotional expression for strength. They defend their name. They argue their intentions. They attempt to prove their innocence in a court that was never designed to be fair. But power is never established through emotional defense. It is established through emotional restraint. Machiavelli understood this with brutal clarity. A ruler who reacts publicly to every insult becomes predictable. And predictability is vulnerability. The more you reveal your internal state, the more ammunition you provide. When they provoke you and you respond, you hand them control. When they provoke you and you remain still, you force them into uncertainty. Uncertainty is destabilizing. Detachment is not coldness. It is sovereignty over impulse. It is the ability to feel the storm within you without allowing it to spill into the world. It is the discipline to endure misunderstanding without rushing to correct it. Because here is the deeper truth. They are not searching for understanding. They are searching for confirmation. Confirmation that you are shaken. Confirmation that you are wounded. Confirmation that you are still dependent on their approval. Do not give them that satisfaction. Stand in silence and observe what happens when you refuse to perform pain. Watch how their confidence wavers when you do not defend yourself. Watch how speculation grows in the absence of your explanation. Watch how their narrative weakens when it receives no emotional resistance. Silence forces them to confront their own motives. Most cannot endure that confrontation. The world thrives on visible reaction. It feeds on outrage. It amplifies visible frustration. But what it does not know how to process is calm indifference, controlled presence, a steady gaze that does not blink under pressure. Those who understand this become dangerous in the most disciplined way. When you detach, you begin to see patterns. You recognize who is motivated by envy, who is driven by fear, who is simply following the current of popular opinion. You realize that opposition is rarely personal. It is strategic, social, or psychological. People align against what threatens their position. Your growth shifts the balance. Your silence removes predictability. Your refusal to submit destabilizes their control. And so they push harder. Let them. While every attempt to provoke you reveals their anxiety, every insult exposes their insecurity, every coordinated effort to isolate you confirms that your presence carries weight. If you were insignificant, you would be ignored. Understand this deeply. The isolated mind begins to wander into doubt. It asks whether retreat would be easier, whether softening would restore peace, whether shrinking would bring acceptance. Yes, it would. But acceptance purchased through self-reduction is quiet self-betrayal. Detachment protects you from that betrayal. It reminds you that approval is temporary, but self-respect compounds. That belonging built on compromise erodes identity. That comfort gained through submission breeds long-term weakness. Machiavelli warned that it is safer to be respected than loved, because love is conditional and fragile. Respect, especially when rooted in strength and composure, creates boundaries. Detachment builds those boundaries. When you stop chasing validation, you become internally anchored. Your value no longer fluctuates with their mood. Their praise does not inflate you. Their criticism does not deflate you. You remain measured. This emotional neutrality unsettles people more than aggression ever could. They expect visible struggle. They anticipate cracks in your composure. They search your expressions for evidence of distress. Give them nothing. Let your face remain calm. Let your voice remain steady. Let your actions remain deliberate. Internally, you may feel intensity. That is natural. But discipline means choosing what the world is allowed to see. And you are not suppressing emotion. You are mastering its timing. Detachment also sharpens perception. Without emotional noise, you detect subtle shifts. You notice who withdraws, who tests boundaries, who watches quietly, who pretends neutrality but carries silent resentment. Clarity becomes your shield. You stop asking why they misunderstand you. You begin asking what advantage they seek, and this shift in questioning transforms you. Victims ask why. Strategists ask how. How is this hostility structured? How is influence distributed? How can this pressure be redirected? How can silence become leverage? Once you ask the right questions, the environment changes from chaos to chessboard, and you are no longer emotionally cornered. You are calculating. This is the elevation that only pressure can create. The majority break when isolated because their identity depends on external reinforcement. Remove applause, and they collapse. Remove reassurance, and they retreat. But the few who endure isolation without emotional leakage become internally fortified. They discover something rare. They discover that they do not need to be understood to remain powerful. They do not need to be liked to remain stable. They do not need to be defended to remain dignified. And once this realization settles into your bones, something irreversible happens. Fear diminishes. Because what can they truly take from you if your worth is not located in their approval? Detachment turns isolation into training. It transforms hostility into conditioning, and it refines you in silence while others exhaust themselves in noise. You will feel moments of loneliness. Do not romanticize them. Do not dramatize them. Endure them. Loneliness is the price of independence in environments built on conformity. Stand within it. Let the discomfort harden into composure. Let the rejection crystallize into clarity. Let the pressure compress you into something denser, sharper, more deliberate. They may believe you are weakening because you are quiet. They do not understand that you are concentrating. And concentration precedes decisive movement. Remain still. Let them speak. Let them speculate. Let them attempt to read you and fail. The one who controls emotion controls perception. The one who controls perception controls position. And position, not popularity. It determines who ultimately wins when the world turns against them. Once you have mastered your reaction, the battlefield changes. You are no longer fighting emotion. You are studying structure. When the world turns against you, most people respond with either confrontation or retreat. They attack loudly, or they disappear quietly. Both are emotional responses. Both are predictable, and predictability is a weakness your opponents can measure. You must choose a third path. Reposition. Not dramatically, not publicly, not with declarations of defiance. You reposition silently, with calculation so precise it feels almost invisible. Hostile environments are not chaotic. They are structured networks of incentives, fears, alliances, and silent hierarchies. When you feel resistance, it means your presence is interfering with someone's perceived stability. Your competence, your independence, your refusal to bend, it shifts something, and people protect what benefits them. Machiavelli understood that power is not sustained by virtue alone. It is sustained by leverage. If those around you see you as replaceable, you are vulnerable. If they see you as necessary, Even adversaries must adjust their posture, so you increase your necessity. While they speak, you refine. While they criticize, you sharpen. While they attempt to isolate you socially, you deepen your skill privately. Skill is silent power. It does not argue. It does not defend. It does not justify itself. It simply becomes undeniable. The isolated strategist asks a different question from the wounded ego. Not, why do they oppose me? But where can I become indispensable? Indispensability changes the equation. People tolerate what they cannot remove. They negotiate with what they cannot overpower. They respect what they cannot ignore. This is not about arrogance. It is about structural awareness. In hostile territory, social approval is unreliable currency. Competence is stable currency. The more value you create, the more carefully others must calculate before attempting to diminish you. But there is another layer. Do not mistake visibility for influence. Many attempt to win back power by becoming louder. They increase presence. They defend publicly. They seek allies openly. They perform strength. Performance invites scrutiny. True repositioning happens beneath attention. Reduce unnecessary exposure. Speak only when your words carry weight. Withhold opinion when silence creates ambiguity. Ambiguity unsettles opponents because it denies them predictive clarity. When they cannot read your next move, they hesitate. Hesitation shifts power. Observe who is driving the hostility. Is it one dominant personality masking insecurity? Is it a collective driven by fear of displacement? Is it subtle exclusion rather than open attack? Each pattern demands a different response. Machiavelli emphasized adaptability. A rigid mind breaks under shifting pressure. A flexible strategist bends without appearing to yield. If confrontation would strengthen your adversary, avoid it. If patience will expose their overreach, wait. Time reveals imbalance. In hostile environments, opponents often overplay their aggression. As they attempt humiliation, they exaggerate narratives. They push too hard, too visibly. Let them. Emotion blinds precision. The more reactive they become, the more disciplined you must remain. When they overextend, they create their own weakness. When they attempt to isolate you excessively, they reveal insecurity. Do not rush to exploit these cracks. Allow them to widen. Patience is a weapon few can wield. Most crave immediate vindication. They want visible victory. They want applause. You must want position. Position determines outcome long before outcome becomes visible. Another mistake many make during isolation is desperate alliance building. They cling to anyone offering minimal support. They seek comfort in numbers. But alliances built from fear of loneliness are fragile. Choose alignment carefully. Yet if you align with those who respect strength, not those who pity you. Pity weakens perception. Respect fortifies it. Sometimes the strongest alignment is selective independence, the calm figure who stands without obvious faction. Independence creates unpredictability. Unpredictability creates caution, and caution reshapes behavior around you. You must also understand optics. In hostile territory, perception is monitored. Do not appear bitter. Do not appear wounded. Do not appear desperate. Even if internally you feel the weight, externally you remain composed. Composure is not denial. It is message control. The message you project must be simple, stable, capable, unaffected. When your emotional state appears unchanged despite opposition, it forces recalibration. They expected deterioration. They anticipated retreat. Instead, they witness consistency. Consistency under pressure builds authority. Gradually, subtle shifts occur. Those who once aligned against you begin to reassess, not because they have changed morally, but because the power balance is no longer certain. Uncertainty breeds caution. Caution reduces aggression. This is how momentum shifts, not through dramatic confrontation, but through disciplined positioning. You become more measured, more precise, more deliberate. Your words carry increased weight because they are rare. Your actions draw attention because they are intentional. Your silence begins to feel strategic rather than passive. And this is the transformation most never reach. You stop trying to win arguments. You start shaping terrain. When terrain favors you, a victory requires minimal force. Machiavelli taught that fortune favors the prepared, but preparation is invisible to the impatient eye. The world sees only the moment of shift. It does not see the weeks of restraint, the months of internal refinement, the quiet calibration of leverage. But you will know. You will feel the shift first within yourself. Fear replaced by calculation, anger replaced by strategy, isolation replaced by structure. And in that internal realignment, you become something far more dangerous than a loud opponent. You become controlled. Controlled individuals are difficult to destabilize, difficult to provoke, difficult to predict, and in hostile territory, difficulty is protection. Remember this. Open war is rarely necessary when positioning is precise. But you do not need to destroy opposition. You need to outlast and outmaneuver it. Stay measured, stay observant, stay internally anchored, because when others exhaust themselves through emotional aggression, the one who conserved energy holds the advantage when decisive moments arrive. And decisive moments always arrive. Be ready. There comes a moment when the hostility no longer feels heavy, not because they stopped, but because you changed. At first, their resistance felt like pressure on your chest. Their silence felt like exclusion. Their criticism felt like attack. You measured yourself against their reactions. You monitored every shift in tone. You carried their perception like a burden. Now you do not. Something has hardened, not into cruelty, but into clarity. You see them differently. You see that most opposition was never about truth. It was about discomfort. Your refusal to shrink disturbed their sense of order. Your composure challenged their assumptions. Your independence removed their leverage. And because you did not break, they were forced to confront something unfamiliar. Stability without approval. This is where silent dominance begins. It is not loud. It does not announce itself. It does not seek witnesses. It exists in posture, in timing, in the calm way you enter a room without scanning for validation. When the world turned against you, it tested your emotional dependence. It tested whether your identity was self-defined or socially granted. You passed when you stopped asking for permission. Machiavelli never promised safety. He promised awareness. Yet he understood that human beings are guided by interest and fear more than virtue and loyalty. Once you accept this, resentment dissolves. You stop expecting fairness from those motivated by advantage. You operate within reality. Reality is not cruel. It is structured. And structure rewards discipline. Look at yourself now. You speak less, but with greater precision. You react less, but observe more. You no longer rush to defend your character. You allow time to reveal the fragility of false narratives. Time is a ruthless ally of composure. Many who once opposed you may soften, not because they admire you, but because your endurance forced recalibration. Some may attempt reconciliation. Others may remain distant, watching carefully. Respond without emotion. Forgive strategically, not sentimentally. Trust slowly, and not impulsively. Reveal yourself in layers, not in full exposure. Power regained recklessly dissolves quickly. Silent dominance is sustained by restraint. There is a deeper transformation beneath the surface. You no longer fear isolation. You no longer equate solitude with weakness. You understand that being alone and being powerless are not the same. In fact, the ability to stand alone without collapsing is the rarest form of strength. Most people derive stability from belonging. Remove belonging, and their identity fractures. You discovered something different. That identity anchored internally becomes immovable. This realization changes how you move through the world. You are less impressed by applause, less wounded by criticism, less eager to prove, less willing to explain. You conserve energy for precision. When conflict arises now, you do not feel threatened. You assess. You calculate. You choose response based on outcome, not emotion. Your calm unsettles those who expected volatility. That is dominance, not aggression, not intimidation. Control. The world may still resist you at times. Human nature does not transform because you evolved. There will always be insecurity. There will always be envy. There will always be subtle attempts to diminish what cannot be easily controlled. But now you recognize the pattern, and recognition removes fear. When everyone appeared against you, it forced you to confront the only real vulnerability, your own instability. Once you mastered that, the external noise lost its authority. Winning was never about defeating them, but it was about refining yourself beyond their influence. Now you move differently. You do not seek rooms that welcome you. You enter rooms prepared to remain centered regardless of reception. You do not adjust your standards to reduce tension. You allow tension to exist without surrendering position. You do not perform confidence. You embody certainty, and certainty does not need volume. In the end, the world turning against you was not an obstacle. It was a forge. It stripped away dependency. It burned away naivety. It forced you to see human nature without illusion. You emerged not louder, but sharper, not more aggressive, but more deliberate, not more emotional, but more sovereign. Stand firm in that sovereignty. Let discipline guide your decisions. Let silence protect your strategy. Let competence secure your position. Do not chase approval. Do not fear resistance. Do not surrender composure. Walk forward without asking who stands with you. If they follow, it is their choice. If they resist, it is their nature. You remain unmoved, and that is the final law. When the world turns, the one who does not turn with it becomes the axis around which it must adjust.